And now, North Carolina isn't even listed. Nevada and Georgia are about to not be listed. And we're going to be down to 4 swing states because the closer we get to the election, Americans of all colors, genders, and backgrounds are asking a question. Am I better off than I was 4 years ago? That's been used in campaigns, but it is the operative question for the American citizen. And what they're seeing here is the mainstream media is making it about race. They're making it about voting blocks. They're making it about identity politics.
But the fact I watched, or actually really just listened to that episode of the Patrick Bet-David podcast, and once again, kind of like in the episode that Tim Pool did with Elijah Schaffer, there was really a lot to discuss. Now, you guys saw the thumbnail. You guys saw the title. And, of course, we're going to be pondering if the current occupant in the White House, Joe Biden, is a racist, if he's dumb, slimy, or a liar. It says 3 things, obviously, in the title of the video, but I decided to throw slimy in there on my own. So we got a lot to talk about in this video, so make sure you guys stick around for the full piece. So where do we start? Well, the other day, Joe Biden gave a speech at Morehouse University, Morehouse College. It is a full black college, meaning that it's a historically black college. This basically means that it's a black college. It's also the same college that Dr. Martin Luther King graduated from, his father too. It's actually a pretty prestigious university, at least in the state of Georgia. It's a pretty prestigious HBCU. And of course, like in all election years, the political rhetoric is obviously going to take off. So I want to start with this speech and then move through Joe Biden's past. And then I want to go ahead and move back to the PBD podcast because there was obviously a lot discussed, including Biden's current failure with the black vote. And of course, you guys are obviously seeing some of the things that were captured at said commencement speech before we even get to the speech. This right here includes students having their backs turned. This right here also includes not only students having their backs turned, this also includes people not standing up when Biden asked them to please stand and clap or they normally do. But obviously, if you actually go through the entire, let's just say if you go through the entire litany of things that Biden has said and done in his past, you wouldn't be surprised to see that there are obviously people out there who are completely and totally unenthused about voting for him this November. Before we look at this speech or these 2 little bits from the speech, I want to go ahead and say this. A lot of people believe that what's going on now is an awakening, economical, all that type of stuff there. And of course, we're going to talk about it over the course of this video here as well. And while I do believe that some of the numbers that have come out recently showing that black support for the former president, Donald Trump, who, by the way, is now the Republican nominee, they're showing that support is actually going up. I don't believe that it's a long-term sustainable process, which, by the way, we will cover in another video because there are other reasons why it is that people are, in fact, voting for the former president. But let's go ahead and get to the speech.
You missed your high school graduation. You started college just as George Floyd was murdered. And there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? Betrayal of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. And most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Okay, so you guys obviously heard George Floyd. You guys obviously heard you weren't able to graduate from high school, all that type of stuff there. But the thing that really struck me was what he said at the very end when he basically told the crowd, basically told all these very, very young students who are probably average age is probably 21 or 22 years old. You may have a few old hats in there. I say that lovingly because I know what the hell it's like to graduate from college at at an older age. But the thing that he basically strikes me as most alarming is the fact that he basically told them that America would never love them, that you have to work 10 times harder to get where you are because of your race, when the data and the evidence seems to suggest otherwise. No group in America has got more advantages at this moment in time, at least from the federal government, than the African-American population. I'm not saying that to be mean or anything. I'm simply saying that right there is the actual cold, hard truth. And don't worry, I'll leave the links in the description box. For example, this moment in time, you have affirmative action, you have diversity, equity, inclusion. You can actually get a job based. And by the way, I think those practices right there are racist as hell, not just against people who would not fit under the category of DEI, but actually it's more racist towards those who do fit under the category of DEI, because it basically tells them right away that you didn't really earn the position, you didn't get it based upon merit, you got it because of your race. And also, how many times do we see the race card getting played? How many times do we see the race baiting get played? Basically, what Joe Biden is doing is he is trying to turn these young men and women angry. These young men and women went to school for 4 years to get a degree, so that way they could hopefully get a job, of course. Also, something else too, educational standards have also been lowered as well. All links, of course, will be in the description box of this video here. However, the thing is this right here. The thing that really concerns me is the fact that he is blackpilling these students. He's making these students believe that America does not love them. He's making them believe that there is no political solution, regardless of how he may or may not sound. However, Joe Biden does have a history of this, and he does have this history of sliminess. Let me just go ahead and kind of rip off a bit of a montage here.
Where the largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. It's a brilliant. I'm not joking.
Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains. Look, we need to reform the criminal justice system to make sure black mothers feel confident when they send their son out on the street that he's going to be safe. We got to recognize that kid wearing the hoodie may very well be the next poet laureate and not a gangbanger. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids.
And if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And there's also this little bit.
100,000 of the kids you read about in the front page of the newspaper every day. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, a portion of them will become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
That last part where he was talking about they don't need to be in society, that was the 1994 crime bill that Joe Biden helped push. You see, when the Democratic Party, where Hillary Clinton ran in 2016, black voters were not as enthused because Bill Clinton signed that crime bill. And of course, Bill Clinton's the one who had to answer for it. But what they failed to mention to you was it was actually Joe Biden who's the one who got it passed, wrote the bill and everything. And of course, Joe Biden is also the most anti-gun politician in American history. But still, at the same time, though, it was actually Joe Biden that actually pushed that out there. I was kind of surprised to see the Clinton campaign not throw him under the bus then. But still, at the same time, though, it obviously did not happen. I'm just saying. But people also forget there was also the 1991 crime bill, which was just as bad, if not way worse. But let's continue. Now, that first one that you guys saw where he was talking about not being able to walk around his state without hearing a certain accent, that right there should kind of tell you something right away. But I really truly believe that was more of a Freudian slip than anything else. However, that does seem to suggest that there is something underlying. Him doing the whole, they're going to put you back in chains thing, that right there was something that we dealt with back in 2012 when he was vice president and he was running alongside Obama. By the way, Obama constantly played the race card. As a matter of fact, race relations got worse when he was in office, according to a poll from Gallup, and it lines up pretty daggone consistently. Obviously, it's about identity politics, but we'll get to identity politics a little bit later on in this video. Like I said before, this video is a relatively lengthy video, but of course, the cherry on top of everything is obviously really Clarence Thomas, but he'll be discussed a little bit more broadly here shortly. The point is this right here. It seems to me like what Joe Biden is doing is, whether he knows it or not, obviously what he's trying to do is he's trying to pander to get their vote, but also something else too needs to be said. What he's really doing is he's blackpilling these people. You see, right now, Joe Biden is running against a candidate who's actually beating him in all the polls. Now, I personally don't put full stock in the polls. However, polls, when it comes to Donald Trump, typically tend to underestimate his support, not overestimate his support. So we have no idea exactly how far the polls are off. Still, at the same time, though, ramping up this type of divisive rhetoric is not exactly something that you would want to hear or at least want to see him doing, especially in an extremely polarized society. It's almost like he's trying to get these people to become ardent revolutionaries someday, because typically people become ardent revolutionaries once they have been fully and totally blackpilled, and it's currently the left side of the aisle that's more blackpilled than the right, because obviously the guy they keep going after, former President Trump, in the courthouse, these court cases do not seem to work, and they have not been able to get an actual serious trial against him going this year. Yes, he's in court right now for Stormy Daniels. That situation is falling apart, and it will be overturned on appeal. The situation in Georgia is pretty much dead. That's the only one that anybody really and truly cared about, and as you guys can see, is starting to blackpill the masses, blackpilling their voting base. But we'll get to that a little bit more towards the end. But speaking of things that Joe Biden has said that was an absolute ardent lie or a falsity, let me give you one more that was leaked on the Zoom call right after he got elected.
This country is doomed. It is doomed, not just because of African Americans, but because by 2040, this country is going to be minority white European. Hear me? Minority white European. And you guys are going to have to start working more with Hispanics.
The problem is black people. What else did he say? Oh, yeah, that's right. At the very end, you got to work with Hispanics. I've talked about this in multiple videos talking about immigration. In these very, very large cities, Hispanics and black people typically tend to be, guess what? Natural enemies for a multitude of reasons. By the way, Biden is bringing these people in. I've talked about this on several occasions. And of course, he's sold people who are listening a bill of crap when he says that the country will be majority non-white by 2040. Let me go ahead and tell you why that right there will not be the case. Yes, I've had to recently point out on several occasions that while the birth rate in the country is very low, especially the white birth rate is low, one thing is happening. Conservative households, mostly white households and moderate households, are having 2 kids per one. Liberal households, of course, liberals have a tendency to cut off their own. They're very, very pro-abortion, and they're very, very much anti any form of responsibility. The black community at this moment in time has got the highest abortion rate of anyone in the country. It's also got the highest black-on-black murder rate of anybody in the country, the highest murder rate, period. It's also got the highest rate when it comes to death by disease, and it's also got the highest rate when it comes to sexually transmitted disorders. And it's 12.6% of the population, and going into the 2010 census, if I remember correctly, it was 13.6 going into 2020. It's now 12.6. Some estimates have actually had it below 12%. And you're bringing in a lot of Hispanics across the border, who, by the way, will have children, and of course they will multiply. But if anything, by 2040, it's probably going to be something more along the lines of maybe 55 to 58% white, 10% other, and the black community, it could find itself very, very low when it comes to overall percentages, where Hispanics is probably going to be somewhere right around 20. So it seems to me like, once again, Joe Biden, given the current demographic and currently what's actually going on in the nation, especially with the left being extremely pro-abortion, not actually arresting criminals, defund the police, allowing the black-on-black murder rate to continue to go through the roof. It seems to me like what's really and truly happening is that these people were, in fact, absolutely lied to. We already knew that he was a liar. I just figured I would throw that in there for keepsake. And also, we know that he is, in fact, slimy, which we'll cover here in a second. The point is this right here. If you look at all this type of stuff, you would probably ask yourself, well, I guess the real racist in the room is, in fact, Joe Biden, and you would have a very, very good argument. But we'll get to that here momentarily. But let's watch the other part of this speech, because I think the other part of the speech is actually just as important as the previous. Let's go ahead and roll this.
This is what we're up against. Extremist forces aligned against the meaning and message of Morehouse. In America, we're all created equal. Extremists close the doors of opportunity, strike down affirmative action, attack the values of diversity, equality, and inclusion. I never thought when I was graduating in 1968, as your honoree just was, we talked about, I never thought I'd be in a president at a time when there's a national effort to ban books, not to write history, but to erase history. They don't see you in the future of America, but they're wrong. To me, we make history, not erase it. We know black history is American history.
We're up against extremism. A lot of lies there. A lot of lies there. Earlier in the video, I talked about affirmative action very briefly. Affirmative action was designed to get more black people work, especially in certain fields. Not by merit, but by their race. You see, when you do stuff like that there, you're basically telling somebody that they're special only because of their race and not because of their own merits, their own brain power, their own hard work. DEI basically does the exact same thing, and equality of outcome is also something else too. I recently released a video about a woman on a plane going absolutely crazy, causing a fight when she's asked to do what you do when you sit in an exit area on a plane. And of course, she flipped out, went crazy, and ended up getting pulled off the plane. It actually caused everybody else to actually miss their next flight or be delayed. That's rampant entitlement. You see, that rampant entitlement also creates hate amongst other people. So a lot of this is actually self-induced. Biden, of course, is very much the feelings over facts guy. We got to hear Ben Shapiro do the whole facts over feelings spiel. Well, Joe Biden is the exact opposite. He is feelings over facts, meaning he loves to prey on emotions. You see, this right here is the biggest problem the black community is having. You see, if their emotions continue to go through and through, they just continue to just fly up the daggone roof, it's going to lead to more of those things that I mentioned earlier. Fatherless homes, murder rate going through the roof, more and more bad decisions, STDs, all that type of stuff there. As I said before, and I kind of harken back to this when I talked about that that leaked Zoom call. No, it does not mean that this right here is going to be a majority non-white country by 2040. If anything, it's still going to be very much a white country in the overall percentage. If anything, it looks like it's just going to be a country that doesn't really have a whole lot of black people in it at the rate that we're going. So it's very possible that black might not even be an actual race in the census. It could very well be in the other category. Thanks to Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and politicians like him in the Democratic Party. A lot of young black men are waking up to this, where they're actually beginning to shift their vote to the right, but we'll get to that more in the other half of the video. The thing is this right here, and by the way, there's also a lot more lies that, quite frankly, I need to go ahead and debunk before we go any further. And that right there is on the topic of banning books. Oh, by the way, speaking of banning black culture, black history, Hattie McDaniel was the first black woman to win an Academy Award for the film Gone with the Wind. You guys had that banned. That was a major accomplishment. That was the left that had that banned. The only books that the right had banned were Genderqueer and This Boy is Blue. Books that included sexual acts that did not need to be shown to children. Just saying. It also reminds me, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, those books got banned. There were even some Dr. Seuss books that got banned by the left, got canceled by the left. So if anybody's been getting rid of American history or anything that is in books or anything, it's been the left. And they've been getting rid of books that, quite frankly, you can very easily gloss over whatever connotation could be made, or they wouldn't be made apparent to most people. But Genderqueer and This Boy is Blue, it's pretty obvious what the intentions were of those. We didn't want little children being involved or even looking at books like that. And by the way, I have not even bothered to mention polling data that much. I've not even bothered to mention the economical status of what's going on in this nation here. I've never been able to mention the shift to the right. So we've already identified that Joe Biden was slimy, shady. Don't even get me started. And I haven't even mentioned the Hunter Biden stuff. I haven't even mentioned the Ashley Biden stuff. I haven't mentioned any of that. Okay? I don't think I need to. This right here is just more and more crap that we're seeing that's extremely pervasive at this moment in time that I haven't even bothered to get to. But still, at the same time, that right there may be a video later on in the future. Burisma, all the other crap, basically having a prosecutor fired in Ukraine and then blaming Trump for that, or shifting out against your opponent at a later date. I mean, we haven't even gotten to stuff like that there to determine whether Joe Biden is shady or not. I mean, it's pretty obvious. He's pretty daggone shady. He's pretty daggone evil. He's pretty daggone scummy. It's obvious that he's a liar, but is he intelligent? I want to talk about this intelligence part first before we go any further, because this right here, to me, I think, should have told everybody from the start how big of a disaster and how big of a POS this guy really was.
Started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
People in Britain would have been familiar with those words. They heard the same ones in a political commercial from Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations?
Biden saw the Kinnock commercial and evidently loved it.
Was it because they were weak? Those people who could work 8 hours underground and then come up and play football? Weak?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football for 4 hours?
Biden had told other audiences he admired Kinnock, not this one. This one, he later said, he had listening in hushed silence.
No, it's not because they weren't as smart.
Back in 1987, Joe Biden decided he was going to run for president. He was the chief Democratic candidate running against Michael Dukakis in the 1988 election. And you guys are obviously seeing some stuff here in the B-roll footage. Like, for example, there's this little bit where he copied and plagiarized RFK. He also copied and plagiarized Jack Kennedy. And then, of course, there's also this little nugget here.
Of our society, it cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Let us pledge that our generation of Americans will pay any price, bear any burden, accept any challenge, and meet any hardship to secure the blessings of prosperity and the promise of opportunity for our children.
We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
He's never been competent. He's never been original. He's just a good old-fashioned 50-some-odd-year politician that come from a blue state. And, of course, you guys obviously heard what he said earlier about calling black men predators. I mean, not wanting them in society. That right there was actually a part of the crime bill that Bill Clinton signed in 1994. There was actually another crime bill in 1991 that was actually way worse that Joe Biden also helped co-sponsor, which makes the whole Clarence Thomas situation even stranger when you actually get to it. But we'll get to that here soon. Like I said, it's going to be a long video. But let's talk about what's actually going on. So the Patrick Bet David podcast, they did a nice little segment on this, and they decided to go through what was going on and give their take, and I'm here to kind of add on to it and try to contrast to you guys why it is people are, in fact, waking up and seeing exactly what it is I've been talking about.
Look at a reaction.
You look at 2024, Biden still leads among black voters over Donald Trump, 69% in an average of polls. But look at this number for Donald Trump, 22%. Where was Donald Trump at this point 4 years ago in the polls? He was just at 9% of the vote. So he's seen more than a doubling in his support among African Americans. This margin, which was in the 70s just 4 years ago, look at where it is now, 69 minus 22. That puts it in the 40s.
Someone in
My
the mic
goodness
is saying,
gracious.
hurry up.
If this held through the general election, obviously we're still months away, this would be by far the best performance for a Republican candidate among black voters in a generation, two generations, probably since 1960 and Richard Nixon against John F. Kennedy. That's how long we're really talking about when we're looking at this margin here. This could be a truly historic margin. It's quite a troubling sign for the Biden campaign.
So where is Biden weakest among black voters? When you look at this number, who are they?
Good for her for asking that
follow-up.
Who are
these voters? And Let's break it down by age, because I really think this gives you a good insight into what's exactly cooking here. Take a look here. If you look among black voters age 50 and over, you see that Joe Biden has a very substantial lead here. Look at this, 82% to 8%. This lead is still in the 70s. This looks a lot like what we saw in the overall polling back in 2020. But look at voters under the age of 50.
Which is
look
what matters
here, Donald
for the
Trump
future.
is pulling 25% of that vote. Joe Biden is at just 62% of this vote. This lead, Sarah, this lead is south of 40 percentage points. This is historic. This is what a lot of folks have been talking about, that Joe Biden has a specific problem among younger black voters. And
what's happening is that young black males are beginning to see that the current Democratic Party is not helping them out. These right here are young black males, ages, I would say, 18 to maybe 30. And then, of course, you've also got young black males who are ages 31 to 40. Now, I say young black males because you haven't gotten over the hill, meaning you haven't gotten to 50. What's happening is that married families, by the way, this is the age bracket of young black males and black women that happen to be married or have kids or be actually together, nuclear family. They are seeing their economical status getting a lot worse, whereas black people over the age of 50, they have been loyal to the Democratic Party their entire lives. They've been taught and trained to vote Democrat their entire lives. It's been ingrained in their actual family, their culture. And by the way, the single mother issue and no father in the house issue is something that I think I could go on for days, but I haven't really done a video on, but I don't think I need to for the context of this video here. So what's happening is obviously a shift. Now, there was a big time, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The episode itself, and I'm going to link in the description box. This right here is about 35 minutes in, all the way to 51. I had to pull a lot. I had to file a lot of it down because Adam on the Patrick Bet David podcast just went on for like 5 minutes and didn't make a point at all and tried to say there was a demographic shift in the vote going on. And that is partially true, but he failed miserably on actually explaining it. And now, of course, with the advent of the internet, people can actually see what the quotes are, and they can, quite frankly, see exactly who Joe Biden really and truly is. Not by the actual actions of his administration, but obviously by things that he has said. And now people are saying, my God, he was always this bad.
Why, Tom, do you guys think it's a significant jump in the young voters? Is it because this it drives me crazy, this rhetoric, and nobody's screaming and yelling while he's saying this? Is it because they've had enough of this bullshit, divisive, the world is against you, black people, you can't, he's basically saying you guys are too dumb to do this, you're too dumb to get IDs to vote, because that's their rhetoric. You guys are getting pushed down, and you don't have the same opportunity that everybody else has. What is it?
Well, what's happening is affordability in America is horrifying. And the communities that have supported Democrat candidates are looking back and realizing they haven't gotten the support.
People, their situation is what? How much money do I have in my pocket at this moment in time? That right there is what the hell people really and truly are caring about right now. They're also caring about the fact that the world right now is at the brink of war. If you see, the thing about this particular election cycle is that people can see what they had. That right there is the problem. You see, you couldn't really tell that back in 2008 when Bush was leaving the office because the economical disaster that happened under his watch. The bailout occurred under his watch. You had stagnation in the country, kind of got used to that when Obama was in office, and then Trump came out there and woke everybody up. And, of course, he didn't do everything he said he was going to do. There are a lot of reasons for that. A lot of reasons I think that there are things that he could have done, they could have fixed, but there's also things he could not have fixed, especially given his Congress and given his Senate and given the Democrats and all the extra crap they threw on him. It's one of the main reasons why so many people are motivated to get all of these people on the left out, myself included. The thing is this right here. People are looking at their economic status. People are looking at how much money they're losing. They're looking at the fact that the mainstream media tells us over and over and over again that the economy is in fact getting good, when in reality the economy is actually getting way worse. The price of everything is damn near doubled, sometimes even tripled. This same administration tried to say that when they came in the Oval Office, the inflation rate was 9%, when in reality it was only 1.6%. Biden's policies over the course of 2021 eventually made it 9%, and while transitory was possible, at best it probably would have only gotten to maybe 3.5% to 4%. Which right now is inching more and more and more back towards that 5% mark, and it looks like it's probably going to get a lot worse. Inflation Reduction Act made things a lot worse, and I think that is what people have finally got on their minds. I can't pay for this, I can't pay for bare essentials. But of course, there's also the conversation of how many more swing states do in fact exist, but we'll get to that more towards the end. As can obviously see, there is definitely an awakening going on, and of course, people are starting to see right through it. But then you get this little number here, which of course is the actual meat of everything, because once again, it comes back to identity politics, like always.
About identity politics. But the fact is, affordability crisis in America is making people rethink whoever they have supported politically, historically, and has the greatest emergence of independent voters in this country's history. And we're down to 4 swing states, and it's looking more and more like people are going to make the choice. You got to remember Biden. Biden is a frickin' closet racist. He was the guy that tried
allegedly,
to keep...
Tom.
Not allegedly.
No, he's not. He's
we
real.
can go back and look at his own writings. I reference his writings that was brought... Let me tell you, he was preventing Clarence Thomas from going to the Supreme Court. He was extending the hearings. He was bringing in witnesses. He was doing things until C. Boyden Gray, who was counsel to the president, walked into his office and said, "You wrote this some years ago. Would you like to see this in full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times? Because we will put it there. You have been living in the closet. You are against this man, and you need to move this hearing forward." And the next day, Biden moved, and Clarence Thomas was rightfully confirmed by the Senate to the Supreme Court.
Now, I've gone on for a while, and yet we've still not touched it. Is Joe Biden an actual racist? Well, given everything that he has said, given the performative politics, given not just the performative politics, but also at the exact same time, given the falsities that he's told to a certain community, you can definitely establish that he's a liar. You can definitely establish that he's stupid. You can definitely establish that he's slimy and shady. And you can also establish that he's extremely incompetent. Definitely the worst president in American history. But what little event makes him an actual racist? Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, the situation involving Clarence Thomas deserves its own video on its own. And of course, I've written it down to put into the projects that I plan on doing in the near future, especially when we start talking about moments in time where the media try to manipulate. Let me go ahead and just explain this very, very quickly. And of course, I'll have a video essay on this at a later date. But see, to me, this right here is the thing that proves it to me that he's an actual literal racist, even though we've already established 5 other things about him. This right here just be number 6, the cherry on top. The thing about Clarence Thomas was that when Clarence Thomas was being brought to the Supreme Court, George Herbert Walker Bush wanted a much, much more conservative justice in there. So obviously the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the guy who's going to be doing all the interviews, is Joe Biden. And of course, Joe Biden has been in the United States Senate since 1972. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of murkiness even about his first wife's death and his daughter Naomi. I mean, I didn't even go through Ashley Biden and all the other stuff that, quite frankly, should have been mentioned in this video. The reason why, obviously, is because of YouTube's terms of service. I'm trying to keep this thing political without going too deep. And obviously, you're probably upset with yourself thinking you haven't even hit the biggest issues, but here's the point. Clarence Thomas should have told you everything you needed to know about Joe Biden. Look at what he went through. So basically what happened was, during this entire situation, they went out of their way to make this process as nightmarish as possible for Clarence Thomas. It ended up being one of the longest Senate confirmation hearings. But then again, though, we should have also seen this was going to happen when it came to the topic of Raymond Bork. And you could probably also argue that Antonin Scalia, the situation that happened there, obviously they went out of their way to make this a nightmare. The fact of the matter is this right here. The mainstream media actually saw a black man literally getting some form of lynching right there on national television. And the main weapon they used, of course, was a woman, Anita Hill, who, come to find out, wasn't telling the truth about any damn thing, but Joe Biden turned Clarence Thomas's life upside down. And, of course, it would eventually lead to the infamous, well, I'll just play this part right here for you guys, so that way you guys can see exactly what Clarence was thinking.
He knew he was going into the trial of his life with the Senate, run by the Democrats.
The hearing will come to order.
We knew it was in the lion's den.
Good morning, Judge. Welcome to the blinding lights. Finding out what you mean when you say that you would apply the natural law philosophy to the Constitution is, in my view, the single most important task.
Who knows? I have no idea what he was talking about.
I just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about here, that you and I know at least what we're talking about here. There's a fervent and aggressive school of thought that wishes to see natural law further inform the Constitution than it does now, argued against by the positivist led by Judge Bork. Now again, that may be lost on all the people. You know and I know what we're talking about.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. You sit there and you have no idea what they are talking about. All I know is that he was asking me these questions about natural law.
Someone may apply it in a way, like Moore, who leads him in a direction that is, quote, liberal. You may apply it in a way that leads you in a direction that's conservative. Or you may, like many argue, not apply it at all. But it is a fundamental question that is going to be almost impossible for non-lawyers to...
So yes, we've established, and really to tell you the truth in that bit right there, I think that Justice Clarence Thomas kind of established everything I've been saying over the course of this video to be true. Incompetent, obviously a liar, shady, misrepresents, feeds people falsities. I don't know if I said it or not, but extremely incompetent, a complete total buffoon, and of course corrupt as hell, which I have not spent much time talking about in this video, but could actually be its own video on its own. And yes, he's very, very much a racist. And the notion of identity politics is what they've been trying to play. But the thing about identity politics is that even when you do get power, it never lasts. And I think that's really, truly all you needed to say when it comes to identity politics. But of course, people are beginning to wake up and they're starting to see that identity politics has not paid the bills. And that right there is the biggest reason why it is at this moment in time that you are seeing a massive shift when it comes to young black males who now intend on voting Republican. Please tell me what you guys think in the comments section. Please tell me what you think. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share the video. Right now, it's the only video that's been planned for Wednesday. But please hit the like button, subscribe, share. Please comment, and I'll see you guys later.